Hello! This is Tim.
And this is Dane.
And welcome to Was It Worth It, brought to you by SharcTank.com. That's shark with a C for cash money, yo!
I wish.
So, Was It Worth It is a podcast where we play a game, review it, and, tell you whether or not we think it's worth the money.
Yeah, I mean, would you buy it after this show? Well, let's find out.
Yeah, well, will you? Yeah.
What game?
Go. What game did we play?
We played Strider, the 2014 remake of Capcom's classic side-scrolling action platformer, which is currently $15 on Steam. While Capcom's Osaka studio had a hand in this remake, it was developed mainly by Double Helix, a developer from Irvine, California, and they're known for making a few other titles in some already established series like Silent Hill Homecoming alongside Konami, and the more recent Killer Instinct remake on the Xbox One alongside Rare. Now, this remake of Strider brings about all of the fast-paced ninja-slashing goodness of the original, namely the arcade version, which is the version the remake is mainly based on. I guess it also has a little bits of the NES version as well,
sure,
from what I read. But you're playing as the elite Strider, Hiryu, and fighting to overthrow a corrupt government in a dystopian nation. It seems like it's based on communist Russia.
Yeah, most certainly.
As far as keeping it close to the originals, they even went as far as to remix all of the music from the original game. So Strider really feels like the original in almost every aspect, except for one, in my opinion. While the original Strider games were known for their almost unforgiving difficulty, I feel like the remake doesn't quite follow suit there. I played for about 4 hours on the medium difficulty setting, didn't really have any trouble at all. While there's a hard difficulty setting, I didn't play it. Did you try it hard?
Yeah, no, I never actually did try hard, and I kind of had the same feeling about the medium difficulty as you did.
Yeah, I mean, just knowing how the game is laid out, I can't imagine that even the hard would be as blisteringly difficult as the originals unless they really, made your health go down, much faster or something like that.
Well, did you fight Bounty Hunter solo?
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, maybe I just botched that fight, but the first time I fought him, his abilities do a ton of damage. And also, it was something I noticed as the game progressed, is there's the amount of hit points that the enemies had was noticeably higher. I was definitely wailing on them a lot more.
For sure.
And, we played maybe a third of the game. You know what I mean? So I can imagine towards the end, as enemies are noticeably buffer, you know what I mean? I guess it depends on how much better your abilities are, how much damage they do.
Exactly. I was about to say, as you get more abilities, you can kind of combat the new enemies a little bit better.
Right, exactly.
And then also, just the fact that there's just checkpoints all over the place, that's a more modern aspect of this.
Sure, yeah.
Unlike the classics, which felt a little more like quarter eaters. But anyway, I think I'm getting more in-depth with this than our usual intros to the game, so why don't you let everybody know how you felt about it?
Yeah, so coming into this game, I'm a big fan of the character Strider. I used to play the games as a kid, the old games, but I wasn't, in love with the games like I was with Mega Man. I was more in love with the character, and when I think of Strider, I honestly think of more Marvel vs. Capcom Strider opposed to the original Strider.
Same here.
And I feel like this game actually, the feel of Strider was more like the feel of the newer Strider from the fighting games.
Yeah, there was even a button that you could hit that did sort of the uppercut slash.
Exactly, yep.
That felt kind of like doing what are those? The launchers in Marvel vs. Capcom.
Sure, yep. So yeah, so I was really excited because the game, you know what I mean, the character Strider felt like the Marvel vs. Capcom Strider that I loved so much. So that made me kind of a little skeptical about it because, I was thinking back to my experiences of the original game, and it was really hard, like you said, and I didn't have that many positive memories about the original game, and knowing this was a remake, I was a little hesitant because I was like, okay, I love the character, but am I going to like the game? Well, the old game was a lot slower paced than the new game, and I think that was a good thing, was that they upped the pace by a lot.
By a lot.
Yeah, this game was super fast paced, like you were jumping around, jumping off walls, climbing on walls, swinging your sword, using energy blast, doing all sorts of cool things, and it was so fun, just moving around and jumping around, and everything was fun because it was so fast paced and the mechanics were so crisp and the game looked great. The game looked fantastic for a $15 game. It was kind of like the 2.5D type thing that they had in the game Deadlight, which we reviewed earlier, where things are moving in and out from the background, but everything in the background was so incredibly detailed, and all the animations were crisp, and nothing, it looked good.
It helps that they probably had a big budget from Capcom.
Exactly, that's the thing. So The game looked great. The moving around felt great. It was fun. There were a lot of mini boss fights, and they were fun. Like,
yeah, the strategy involved there.
Exactly. Yeah. The coloring. A lot of the background was darker shades, but your sword, it glowed, and you had the bright red scarf, and you really popped out. And a lot of the enemies too. Like, just the color palette was great.
Sure.
Everything about this game was good. I only played about a third of it, and I would say that third was worth $15.
Wow.
So, if you are a fan of Strider, if you are a fan of Metroidvanias, if you are a fan of action games, buy this game. There's no reason not to for $15. Anyone who enjoys ninja games will like this game for $15. You can't afford not to buy it, and I've never said that before on this show.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I mean, it sounds like it really left an impression on you. And, you know, like you, I liked the original Strider games, rather more the Strider from Marvel vs. Capcom. Like, because of Strider in Marvel vs. Capcom, I actually went back to check out the Strider games.
Yeah, me too, because I played them when I was younger, and then after I was like, meh, kind of, you know what I mean? And then I went back after I played them in Marvel vs. Capcom, and I played the games a lot more than I did when I was younger.
See, I had never played them before Marvel vs. Capcom, so I went back and was like, I want to see these games where this cool character is from.
Sure.
And I didn't really get into the games themselves.
They're really hard.
Yeah, that's the only reason why. Like, I picked up Strider on the Genesis first, and I really dug the high-energy soundtrack. It did a great job utilizing Genesis's unique, like, punchy sound chip. But yeah, you know, I would never get very far because I'd get frustrated from dying and having to start over like a lot of classic games were.
Yeah.
And then I checked out the arcade version, which I was really impressed by the higher quality 2D visuals, but once again, it was too hard for me to play for long periods of time.
I honestly don't know if I ever played the arcade version, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the arcade one I think is like the really big one, like, and I think that's the one that this remake was strongly based off of too. But, you know, in comes the 2014 Strider remake, and while the intense difficulty is no longer an issue, all of the other fantastic and fun aspects of the originals remain. I've been having a blast with it, like you, for all the reasons I mentioned, you know, earlier in my introduction, or you know, that I was getting into. The pacing is awesome. The gameplay is just a lot of fun. It looks great, like you said. It's so easy to pick up and play. Like,
oh yeah.
And you know, the easier difficulty is just such a minor gripe, and I wasn't really all that wowed by some of the slower paced music tracks in some of the levels. But that's so minor. Like, after thoroughly enjoying like the 4 hours that I've played so far, with no end to the game in sight, by the way. Like, it's we're either 1/3 or 1/2 through, like you said.
Yeah, yeah.
And it'd be a crime to say that this game is anything other than worth the $15.
Oh yeah, I'm honestly baffled that this game is only $15.
The only thing I can think
would
of,
probably call it worth it.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that even though the character Strider is known from Marvel vs. Capcom, I don't really think the Strider series is one of Capcom's more popular.
Oh yeah, it definitely isn't. It definitely isn't.
Yeah, exactly. They're known for Mega Man, they're known for Resident Evil, they're known for Devil May Cry, while, you know, some of the more quote-unquote hardcore gamers are probably well aware of Strider.
Sure.
If they're trying to go for a wider audience, especially by putting it on Steam and advertising and that sort of thing, it's possible that they gave it the lower price just to get more people.
Yeah, they had to have been losing money on this though, because the production quality of this game was just it was up there.
Yeah, honestly, like compared to Needhog, which you know, that game supposedly took 3 years or 4 years or something to make, and it has 30 minutes of content.
These Strider and Needhog are at the absolute other opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, but
of the was it worth it review spectrum.
Right? Yeah, and you know, that's, you know, it's not that fair to compare the two, because one is just an indie developer and the other one is Capcom, right?
And the one that's the indie developer also happens to be a competitive fighter where you're supposed to get in your hours playing real people.
Right. Yeah. That being said, the difference between the two is just so unsettling, almost. Like, it's
I mean, if you're the type of person like us, I mean, obviously the reason we made this show, if you're the type of person who looks at things by their monetary value, then yes, of course. Because to other people, that's kind of subjective, you know, one $15 thing and another $15 thing, despite the fact that they played one for 30 minutes and one for 12 hours, they might still find them both to be just as worth it.
Sure.
Because people have different ways of looking at, you know,
of course,
value,
everyone has their own metric, and I think that's what makes our show interesting, is that me and you have varying views. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we have our varying views, but we still connect on that same level of, like,
We just want to have fun.
And we want it to be worth the money.
Right, exactly. We want
the fun to money ratio. I'd love to come up with some sort of scientific formula.
Yeah.
The fun to dollar ratio, or that kind of thing. But
sorry, I was going to say, but to get more into the Strider game.
Yeah, I was about to say,
get more back into Strider.
Let's expand on
One of the things that I loved was, it's a remake of an old school game, and what's so common among old school games is collection. You go through and you collect little things, and there's usually some interesting, clever, puzzle you'll have to solve to get to this thing that you collect. And oftentimes, the collection is merely for, hey, I got a higher score on this level because I collected more things.
Sure.
Well, when you collect them in Strider, you get new concept art, you get more information about the bad guys, you get more story background, and which I loved. I thought it was so fantastic, because the thing is, if you don't care about concept art or any of that kind of stuff, you can just kind of ignore it, you know what I mean? It's just like any other collection thing that you can ignore to progress the story, but at least they gave you some incentive beyond, hey, I did this cool thing. It's, hey, I did this cool thing and got rewarded for it.
And on top of that, the game itself, like, if it didn't have any of that backstory that you can unlock, it would still just feel like a classic game did.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's based off of a classic game. Because it's not shoving lore and dialogue and story down your throat. There's really not much in the way of cutscenes, or the things that feel like cutscenes you're still playing at the same time, which I'll get to. But the fact that they still pepper in, those collectives those collectibles that actually give you the backstory and the concept art is awesome for people who are interested in learning that.
Exactly.
So it's the best of both worlds. You can play through the whole game and not give a crap about the story, and just get through it quickly at the awesome pace that the game delivers, and still, read up on the story of the game later.
Yeah, and another cool thing about the collectibles is they looked like something out of an SNES or Genesis.
And it also made a sound effect.
Yeah, I love that sound effect every time I got it.
Yeah.
It was so neat.
Yeah, I absolutely love the blend of old and new.
Yeah.
And they did that so well.
Yeah, I can't think of a better remake, like in recent memories, what has been rebooted and have I enjoyed this much. Not since, like, Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 was a reboot of TFC, the Team Fortress Classic, and Valve hit the nail on the head, and I think Capcom followed suit and did just as well.
Capcom and Double Helix,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for sure. The little kid in me was just delighted, and perhaps that's another thing that's sort of fueling this passion, because we're not usually as passionate when we're talking about games here.
Sure.
But it's the nostalgia. That's part of it, and it's hard not to let nostalgia take over.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was going to say is, to be more objectively, obviously there's a lot of nostalgia affecting our opinions. Also, we only played a third of the game, or 40% of the game, whatever it was, so maybe the game gets kind of stale later on. Maybe, like I said earlier, as you progress, the enemies take more hits, and and if it keep progressing at that same pace, at first, you hit an enemy twice and he's dead, and then you hit it, and then you have to do 3 times, and then I can imagine if it gets to the point where you have to just sit there and wail on enemies 5, 6, 7, 8 times just to get the standard run enemy to die, it could get pretty tedious. Yeah. Now, I know if you look at, you can kind of go to the menu and see all the things that are still locked. Abilities and such, you can't see what they are, you can just see that there's an ability coming up and it's currently locked. So I know that there's a lot of powers that I didn't actually get to experience yet. I wish I could have played more, but Dan and I both moved recently, and things have just been hectic lately. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to play as much as I would have liked, but despite that, I didn't really have to with this game, because I just, unless the game, even if the game, like I said, even if the game turned into a pile of dog shit after we finished, after the point that I got to, I still would have said what was up to that was worth it, because it was just so fun. And
I think that's what helps with the game itself feeling like it has so much production value, but they still priced it so low, is that the first half of the game even feels worth $15. So if the second half is awful, it's like, well, that sucks, because it's kind of like a waste of that potential or whatever, but I think that what we've played has been great.
Yeah, I agree.
And I guess to expand even further, to touch on some other parts of the gameplay we might not have talked about that I was impressed by, I even liked the way the game did your health bar, and how, Strider doesn't flinch when he's getting hit by most of the smaller attacks, like the small bullets that are just flying all over the place, so you can just sort of run through a wave of bullets and then murder everything that was shooting you. You'll take damage from the bullets, but as long as you're careful, you kill things quickly enough, you make sure to dodge the important things, you won't die. Your health will go down, but it kind of slowly regenerates. Everything you kill kind of gives you these little...
Yeah, and there's like health capsules just all littered all over there.
Yeah, and the capsules will keep... it seemed almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed almost like your maximum health kind of goes down as you take damage. And then even though your health regenerates, it only will regenerate back up to a certain amount. But then when you break those capsules, that boosts your max amount back up. Is that how it worked?
I'm not entirely certain, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because I mean, I was kind of trying to figure that out, but the game's just so fast, and like obviously the goal is not to take damage, that I never really stopped and like kind of broke that down.
Yep.
But I still liked how that worked. That was really cool.
Yeah, something that we haven't touched on a lot is that this is a Metroidvania. It's
yeah.
So it does have the the where you backtrack after getting a new ability to go through and get
Yeah, you'll run past a door and there's absolutely no way to open it.
Right.
You'll continue along with the game, then you'll get a new skill and realize that new skill opens that door from an hour ago.
Exactly.
So you get to go back and see what goodies you missed or
And the neat thing about it is there are a lot of different things. You know what I mean? You see a door and you see a vent. You're like, oh, I wish I could get, it seems like I should be able to get into that vent. And okay, you will eventually. And then there's like a different door that looks like it's pulsing with energy. And then there's these, these laser beams and like, things that are too tall. How could I jump up there? But it's there. I mean, I must be able to get to it. Things like that.
Yeah. And eventually you will be able to. And the cool thing is your map has a different symbol for each one of those doors or places you can get to. So, if you're passing something and you're not quite sure, it's a little ambiguous, is that a special door? You'll have the little symbol for it on the map.
Yeah, so basically the symbol for the ability that you need to use.
Yeah, to get through. So, yeah, that was really clever, and it was laid out really well.
Yeah.
And the backtracking never really felt like it was a drag, too, just because, the game was quick, and it respawns the enemies. So
yes, that's a minor gripe, but you're able to dispatch them so quickly.
Exactly, so it kind of gives you something to do.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, just running around and jumping and swinging your sword is just fun. It feels good, and maybe if I played it longer, I would have gotten bored with it, but honestly, like, it just felt so good to just, like, use a charge bass and slash through a dude with a sword and then slide under some guy. I don't know, just
it's fast and it's satisfying.
Yeah, exactly. It just felt good.
The bosses and mini bosses too, and the strategies laid out to take them out. It was a good what's the word? How it kind of went back and forth between just dispatching all the enemies quickly. Then you get up to a mini boss and you have to stop and then use your strategy and slow down a little bit.
Sure.
Dodge his move and then he's open and you can attack him and then take him out. And then you go back to, of course, the fast-paced killing everything. Yeah. And it was a really good. It was good how they kind of
good juxtaposition.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess it's really hard to find negatives about this game. There were a few glitches I encountered. Other than that, I don't really have anything negative to say, except maybe the first. You get like this ability that's like an energy ability, and it shoots like this eagle out, and it's kind of hard to aim, and you need it. I wouldn't say you need it, but there's boss fights that become much simpler if you can use it. Yeah. But it's just aiming it is kind of awkward.
Sure.
But it does a lot of damage, so I think it's maybe like a give and take where, it's kind of awkward to aim, but when it lands, it does a lot of damage.
For sure, yeah. And just to touch on the last couple things, we already mentioned these a little bit, but graphically, it looks amazing. And I did want to mention that there are these parts where, like, kind of like cutscenes. Like, I like when you're hanging on to the robot hawk, and it's taking you to, like, a new area, and you can just kind of see everything. Yeah, and it's very cinematic. Like, that quality about it was kind of breathtaking. And then you drop and you're right back into your side scrolling. Like, there's not even a loading. There are a couple loading screens when you go to new areas, but
it was really immersive.
Yeah, definitely immersive. And then there's like a boss where you're riding on the back of this red dragon, and when you take him out, and it takes you into the city, and you get to see the city from the front gates. And it's cool.
It could have been. I feel like if they wanted to make it, they could have made it a AAA game and made it fully 3D, and they let you explore the world.
But then that might have taken away from what made the game great.
I think.
But
maybe they hit it. They did it right.
I think also with the other good reviews this game has been getting, and just how obviously good we saw the game is, and with the lower price, I really do hope that the game does well. I hope it performs successfully and that they're able to work on sequels or expand the Strider universe. And
yeah, if it doesn't do well, it's an extreme failure on the part of the PR, or you know what I mean.
Right.
Like they need new advertisers or something, because this game, once it sells itself once you've played it.
Yeah, and I know we've been going on for a little longer than usual, but the last two things I want to touch on is just to get into the music a little more. It is all remixed tracks from the music from the original games. I did recognize the one or two tracks that I do remember from the original titles,
sure.
And I think they did a pretty good job. I did think that, personally, I think that some of the synths they used sounded a bit cheesy, and there were a few like tracks in the middle of levels that were a little slower, and even though I was like, slashing through dudes, there wasn't too much going on. I liked the more, the boss fights had really cool fast-paced music.
Yeah,
I think that some of the levels could have used some more of that, but overall, I can't really complain that much. I wouldn't listen to it outside of the game, but I think that it was great, and I'm going to use it.
Most games, I think.
Really, I'm kind of a nerd. I love finding games with good soundtracks, and then I'll just binge on them. But and then as far as the story in the game, like I said earlier, it's very simple, which is a good thing because it fits that sort of classic feel. But it's there, and there are some bits of little dialogue sometimes, but it's not like forcing it down your throat.
Oh, yeah.
It's just there while you're playing.
It felt like an old school action game.
Yeah, and Hiryu himself, he's a member of an elite group of high-tech ninja assassins called the Striders. Mm-hmm. He's sent to Kazakh City to kill the evil dictator Grandmaster Mayo, not like mayonnaise.
Not like mayonnaise. That's what I was going to say. At first, I was like, mayo.
But yeah, and
social commentary on sandwich condiments.
Yeah, that's what the game is. It was actually sponsored by Heinz. Anyway, so that's that for Strider. What are we gonna play next week?
I honestly don't remember the name of the game.
Okay.
But it's made by Double Fine, and it's a point-and-click adventure.
God damn it. It's called Broken Age.
Broken Age. I was gonna say, it's Bad World. No, that's not it.
It's developed by Double Fine. They're known for their cult classic, Psychonauts, but that's not all. Double Fine's run by Tim Schafer, and he happens to be a veteran game designer, specifically within the point-and-click adventure genre.
Yep.
Like, his name is on all of the Monkey Island games, or the original Monkey Island games.
Old school LucasArts.
Yeah, Grim Fandango, Maniac Mansion, Full Throttle, which Brandon of SharcTank and I just absolutely love. And Broken Age looks like a modern version of those classics, from its goofiness to its colorful, interesting sense of style, and I'm really excited for the voice work with talents like Will Wheaton and Elijah Wood.
Something we should mention is that it was kickstarted and was insanely successful.
Yeah, how much did it make? Like,
I think over 2 million or something,
million.
right? Yeah, I can't remember. I don't remember the number, so don't quote me on that, but it was a lot of money.
It made a lot of money, and
yes.
I'm super excited to play it.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, I'm kind of torn. I'm kind of torn. I mean, it looks interesting. It looks really interesting, the setting and everything. Now there's two different stories, that are parallel, and you can switch between the two whenever you want and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm not sold on the art style quite yet, and I feel like a game that had that big of a budget should have maybe looked a little better. But then again, it's really stylistic, so that's my own opinion, obviously. I mean, maybe it'll grow on me as I play the game. We'll see.
Sure. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you'll end up liking it because you went in not expecting much, and maybe I'll end up being disappointed because I'm obviously super hyped for it.
You never know.
Okay, so before we go, I just want to give a quick shout out to some close friends of ours. So first, it's the Rumble Pack LP. You can find them on Facebook. Just search Rumble Pack LP. We'll put some links in the descriptions. They do awesome.
You'll put links in the descriptions.
I'll put links in the descriptions. They do awesome co-op Let's Play videos, and I recently joined them for some Payday 2 sessions that they recorded. So please check them out if you get the chance. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Melanie Mack. She's a good friend of mine. We noticed she's graciously listened to a few of these and left some nice comments.
Yes, thank you so much, Melanie.
And if you guys aren't familiar with her, just go check out her videos. She's an even bigger gamer than I am, and she's just incredibly goofy, positive, and very entertaining.
Yes, and she's streaming now on Twitch. I've seen her stream Hearthstone a couple times. So,
oh yeah, and that's a game that you like to play.
Yeah,
I'd love to play Hearthstone. I just need to finally go download it and sign up and whatnot.
Sure.
But yeah, check out the link to Melanie Mack in the description. And as always, like if you like, dislike if you don't like, leave comments.
So there's something I wanted to say in this episode. So what we decided is that Was It Worth It? We're going to do in seasons.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to do 20 episodes in this season. This is episode 16.
Yep.
So there will only be 4 more episodes after this one before we take a break. We're both going to, look into... There's new projects that we both want to do, which we'll end up doing. Plus, we already are both part in other projects, as you've seen Game Chums, if you've seen our YouTube video. Game Chums, we do Let's Plays, and then I also have... Deckheads, and I'm going to be starting something new shortly here, so yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a couple things I'm thinking about that I'd like to start doing too, so
yeah.
I mean, the SharcTank Media channel is going to keep going strong, and we'll have even more coming, and then Was It Worth It will come back eventually, and we might even, bring some more to the table there too. So
yeah, probably more AAA games and that kind of thing, who knows. But yeah, so don't worry, even though Was It Worth It will be away for a while, you can still get your fill of me and Dane. Alright. Thanks for listening, guys.
See you later.